This is the case of Emily Carter, a beloved schoolteacher from the quiet town of Brookdale, whose disappearance and horrifying death left police facing the most disturbing crime they had ever seen. It's also the story of David Harlow, a man with a hidden past, who became the prime suspect in a nightmare that still haunts the community to this day. What started as an abandoned car on a lonely gravel road spiraled into a twisted trail of clues, chilling photographs, and a suspect who vanished without a trace. If you love true crime stories like this and want to see more deep dives into shocking cases, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and stay active so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring you more investigations, more mysteries, and more stories that you won't be able to stop thinking about. In the summer of 2014, the small town of Brookdale sat tucked between rolling hills and quiet farmland, the kind of place where the most exciting news might be a bake sale or a high school football win. Rows of white picket fences lined the streets. The air smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass, and everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. There was no real fear here, no reason to lock doors at night. People trusted their neighbors because nothing bad ever seemed to happen. That trust had been passed down for generations, woven into the town's identity like a family heirloom. But on one unbearably hot July morning, that illusion of safety was about to be destroyed. At 6:42 a.m., a local jogger named Mark, who ran the same route every morning before work, turned onto a narrow gravel road on the outskirts of town. The road was mostly used by farm trucks and delivery vans, and it was rare to see any cars parked there. But that morning, a pale blue sedan sat at the very end of the lane, angled awkwardly, its front wheels turned toward a ditch. The driver's door was wide open, and the engine was silent. Even from a distance, something about it felt wrong. Mark slowed his pace, glancing around, expecting to see someone nearby, but the area was empty. The car's shadow stretched unnaturally in the morning sun, and the longer he stood there, the heavier the stillness seemed to grow. When he approached, he noticed the interior looked untouched, but a faint, metallic smell drifted from somewhere close by. That smell didn't belong in the fresh morning air. A wave of unease hit him, and his instincts told him to back away. Pulling his phone from his pocket, he called the police, his voice low as if afraid to disturb whatever was lurking in the silence. Within minutes, a patrol car arrived, and two officers stepped out, their calm expressions masking an edge of caution. They didn't expect much. Maybe a stolen car dumped overnight. Maybe a stranded driver walking for help. One officer leaned into the car and quickly noted a purse on the passenger seat. The strap coiled neatly like it had been placed there on purpose. A phone sat in the cup holder, screen lit, music frozen mid-song. The keys were still in the ignition. It didn't look like a theft. It looked like someone had simply stepped away and never come back. The officers exchanged a quick glance, unspoken agreement passing between them that something was wrong. One walked to the rear of the vehicle, scanning the gravel for footprints. That's when he noticed the faint trail of disturbed dirt leading away from the car and into the dense tree line. The discovery at the end of that trail would be unlike anything Brookdale's police had ever seen. The abandoned car was quickly identified as belonging to Emily Carter, a 29-year-old elementary school teacher who had grown up in Brookdale. Her neighbors described her as warm, dependable, and always willing to lend a hand. She had no criminal record, no history of trouble, and no reason anyone could imagine for her to vanish. Yet the scene in front of the officers suggested something far darker than a simple disappearance. Inside the car, her purse lay open but undisturbed, her wallet still tucked neatly inside. There was no sign of a robbery, no broken glass, no struggle in the front seat. Even the driver's seat was pushed back just enough to suggest she had been the one behind the wheel when it stopped. It was as if she had stepped out mid-thought, leaving her belongings exactly where they were. The real unease began when one of the officers opened the trunk. An old quilt was crumpled inside, and at first glance, it seemed harmless until they noticed the damp, dark stains soaking into the fabric. The pattern was unmistakable. It wasn't mud. The smell alone confirmed it. Alongside the quilt were several children's toys, a small stuffed rabbit, a plastic doll missing one eye, and a wooden puzzle with half the pieces gone. The toys looked well worn, but their presence in Emily's car was baffling. She didn't have children of her own, and none of her friends recalled her carrying such items. Following the faint trail of disturbed soil behind the car, the officers moved cautiously into the woods. The morning light filtered weakly through the dense leaves, casting shifting shadows across the path. The air grew cooler, quieter, the distant hum of the town fading into an oppressive silence. About 30 yards in, the trail widened into a small clearing, the kind of place someone could pass 1,000 times without noticing. In the center, a shallow pit had been roughly covered with loose dirt and leaves, as though whoever had dug it was in a hurry. It looked out of place in the otherwise undisturbed earth. One officer stepped closer and immediately froze. From the uneven soil protruded a human hand, the skin pale and lifeless, fingers curled slightly toward the palm. The dirt around it was fresh, loose enough that small clumps still slid down into the pit. A swarm of flies buzzed faintly in the air. The discovery was as sudden as it was horrifying, and the weight of what they were seeing pressed on them instantly. This was no missing person case. This was something else entirely, something the quiet town of Brookdale had never faced, and something that would soon unravel into a nightmare far beyond their expectations. The body in the shallow grave was confirmed to be Emily Carter, and the details from the autopsy stunned everyone involved. She had not been killed before burial. The soil in her lungs showed she had been alive when placed in the ground, struggling for air as the dirt closed over her. The scratches beneath her fingernails revealed desperate attempts to claw her way out. Her wrists were marked by deep rope impressions, but the pattern was strange and unusual, weave not commonly found in everyday rope products. This alone suggested that whoever had done this had gone to some effort to plan the restraints. The brutality of the act was chilling, but the motive remained invisible. There was no evidence of theft or sexual assault. Nothing pointed to a personal grudge. It felt almost ritualistic, deliberate in a way that made no immediate sense. Detectives searched Emily's home, looking for anything that might connect her to someone capable of such cruelty. In a locked desk drawer in her bedroom, they found a stack of letters. Each one was typed on what appeared to be an old typewriter. The ink faded in places, the paper slightly yellowed. The wording was blunt and unsettling, and every letter ended the same way. You can't hide from what you owe. There was no name, no return address, and no fingerprints. The paper was generic and the envelopes unremarkable. When investigators spoke to friends and family, none of them recognized the letters or the phrase. Emily had no known debts, no history of disputes, and no involvement in anything that could have triggered threats. But her internet history painted a different, more troubling picture. Late at night, often just before midnight, she had been searching for terms like how to disappear completely, untraceable ways to travel, and missing persons never found. This was behavior her family never suspected, Forensics combed her house and found faint traces of soil on the inside of her back door, the same type of sandy loam found at the gravesite. On the kitchen counter sat an unused train ticket to a city several hundred miles away, purchased just 3 days before her death. Whatever she was planning, she had not told anyone about it. The deeper the detectives looked, the stranger the case became. Every clue hinted at a life Emily had kept hidden from those closest to her. The typewritten letters suggested someone had been watching her for a long time. The rope pattern hinted at specialized knowledge, and the evidence from her home suggested she might have been trying to leave Brookdale for good. But the question was, why and who was determined to stop her? The break in the investigation came unexpectedly, through a seemingly small detail. A hardware store owner, after reading about the rope pattern in the local paper, called the police to say he recognized it. He sold that exact type of rope, a rare, heavy-duty brand usually ordered for custom work. Only one sale of it had been made in the past month, purchased by a man who paid in cash and gave no name. The store's security cameras captured him from a distance, wearing a cap pulled low over his face. Most of his features were hidden, but as he left, the reflection in the glass door caught the edge of his profile. It was enough for facial recognition software to identify him as David Harlow, a 37-year-old former construction worker who had been laid off 2 years earlier and largely kept to himself. David's past offered little comfort. He had a sealed juvenile record and a history of short-lived jobs that ended abruptly. Neighbors described him as quiet but odd, a man who avoided eye contact and seemed to watch people more than speak to them. Detectives dug deeper and found that he had once worked on a property less than a mile from where Emily's body was found. Even more unsettling, he had purchased an antique typewriter at a flea market only months before her death, the same kind believed to have been used for the threatening letters. With this information, a warrant was issued to search David's rundown house on the edge of Brookdale. The property was overgrown, the front porch sagging under years of neglect. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. In the basement, officers found a dirt-stained shovel leaning against the wall, its blade still carrying soil that matched the gravesite. On a workbench sat a stack of paper, neatly arranged, with the same chilling phrase typed again and again: "You can't hide from what you owe." An old quilt, nearly identical to the one found in Emily's trunk, lay folded in a corner. Yet, the most disturbing discovery was in a small locked cabinet. Inside were dozens of Polaroid photographs of women, some sleeping, some walking in public, none appearing to notice they were being watched. Several of the women had never been reported missing, and their identities were unknown. The photographs suggested long-term surveillance, a level of obsession that was deeply unsettling. But the most pressing problem emerged quickly. David was nowhere to be found. His bed hadn't been slept in for days, and his truck was missing. The search for him would soon push the quiet town into a state of fear it had never experienced before. The search for David Harlow turned into one of the largest manhunts in Brookdale's history. Police set up roadblocks on every major route out of town, and officers patrolled rural backroads that were rarely traveled. Volunteers combed the woods, searching abandoned sheds and barns. Helicopters scanned from above, but there was no sign of him. Days passed without a single confirmed sighting. Fear began to seep into everyday life. Parents kept their children indoors, businesses closed earlier, and strangers were viewed with suspicion. The idea that the man responsible for Emily Carter's death was still free and possibly nearby left the community on edge. Then, on the fourth day, a hunter in the neighboring county stumbled upon something strange. Hanging from the low branch of a maple tree was a small, weathered canvas bag. The fabric was stained dark in places, and when he opened it, the contents made his blood run cold. Inside were Emily's house keys, a delicate silver bracelet she was known to wear, and a Polaroid photograph. In the image, Emily sat in a wooden chair, her wrists bound, her eyes wide with fear. Behind her stood David Harlow, his face partially shadowed, holding an old typewriter in one hand. The background of the photograph was unrecognizable, just a plain wall with peeling paint. Forensics determined the photograph had been taken within hours of Emily's disappearance, meaning David had staged it deliberately. It was as if he wanted the police to know exactly what he had done, but not where he had done it. The bag and its contents yielded no usable fingerprints, and there were no footprints nearby. The find only deepened the mystery of where he might be hiding. Despite weeks of searching, no trace of David emerged. Tips poured in from across the state, but every lead ended in disappointment. Some locals began to believe he had left the country. Others were convinced he was still close, hiding in the thick woods or moving between abandoned properties. The lack of resolution kept the case alive in everyone's mind. Over time, the murder of Emily Carter became more than just a tragedy. It became a dark legend whispered about in Brookdale. People claimed to hear strange noises at night, like the faint tapping of typewriter keys drifting on the wind. Whether it was imagination or something else, no one could say for sure. What remained certain was that David Harlow was still out there, and the town could never truly feel safe until he was found. The file on Emily's case stayed open, gathering dust in the police archives, a grim reminder that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who simply vanish.